All right, it's Monday, April 26th. Welcome. This is Mike Adams here. Welcome to the situation update for this Monday, or just to call it short, sit up instead of situation update. Just sit up. That's Monday morning. We should probably all use a little bit of encouragement. How was your weekend? I don't know about you, but I did a lot of work over the weekend. I was in the lab working on the microscope, and I took a bunch of crazy, insane pictures of COVID swabs and COVID masks and found all these weird, strange fibers. Guess what? I'm going to show them to you in this podcast. Now, I have posted an article about that on naturalnews.com. You can see all the photos there. I'm sure these photos are already banned everywhere, but there are some creepy Matrix-like photos. I did ultraviolet light and I've found some super shiny spikes on the COVID swab and these weird fibers that look like Morgellons, but I'm not saying they are. I don't know what they are, but they're weird looking hooks and fibers, and some of these look like they're from the movie Aliens. So check that out, naturalnews.com. But here in this video, I'm going to give you the full high-res photos just in a little bit here as we continue this video. Wow, it's going to be an interesting day. Now, a couple of programming notes. A lot of good stuff coming up this week. We're going to be posting interviews with, let's see, who do we have this week? Oh, yeah, Andrew Wakefield. So that's coming up. And then Mike Lindell. That's also coming up in the next couple of days. Now, in addition to that, we're posting more videos from the Tulsa event. As you may know, last week we were able to post all the videos from the first day. Yeah, took us a whole week to catch up to the first day, because that was like 10 hours of speakers. And now we're going to be posting the second day, and that'll probably take all of this week to get posted. So once again, you're not going to have any shortage of interesting things to watch. And speaking of interesting things, by the way, The Truth About Cancer. Now, tonight, the episode is on how to detox, healing with heat, and why some cancers are driven by hormones, and also hidden hazards of detoxing. Got to be careful with that. You can check all that out. Free episodes to view tonight and throughout the rest of the week at thetruthaboutcancer.io. That's the website to go to, thetruthaboutcancer.io. That'll take you to my landing page. And I'm featured in almost all these episodes, so you get to hear me rant about the cancer industry, which I guess you get to hear that every day here on this podcast, but there's an extra dose of it in the Truth About Cancer series. That should be fun. And also, thank you for supporting our sponsors. The sponsor today is the Satellite Phone Store, SAT123.com. And it's not just the satellite phones that you can use from any boat, any lake, any desert, almost anywhere in the world to actually make a phone call. I've got one. I've got phones for a couple of my staffers now. Some of them are located, one of them's overseas, one of them's in the US, and we have it for emergency backup use, but also they have an emergency backup data system as well. You can get bandwidth. It's not cheap, but it works, and it's not something you have to wait for. It's available right now. So give them a call if you're interested. SAT123.com. That's what I'm using for emergency backup phone service. I'm now carrying my satellite phone in my vehicle just in case the cell towers go down again like they did in Texas, man. That was not an easy week. All right, but check out this fun video. This is, I call it the Clang Awards video. This is way better than anything at the Oscars. It's only 15 seconds. A little bit of a language warning. This is a man beating the faces of a couple of Antifa goons with an iron skillet. And it has an incredible sound. It's kind of like the Liberty Bell sound. This is like the clang of freedom. Check this out. All right, what do you think about that? Huh? Armed and dangerous with a skillet. Is that a concealed skillet? I mean, somebody's going to need some dental work after that. That's for sure. I'm cringing. Do you ever get smacked in the face with a cast iron skillet? I'm telling you what, that is not a small thing. So, lessons learned by Antifa, I suppose. Don't go beating up on people unless you're wearing a mouth guard. It's just so funny that whoever took that video just really caught the audio very nicely. It was like iron skillet on jawbones or teeth or something. And I don't know if you saw the video, if you noticed that one of the guys who was hit in the face, he crawled under that tent fabric there, the black fabric wall. He just crawled under that and crawled away. Probably trying to find his teeth. It's my guess. Yeah, good luck with that. All right, and speaking of self-defense, I just became aware of a new, well, I guess a relatively new pistol this weekend. And this is not a sponsored plug. This is just something that's useful for women. A lot of women have trouble racking the slide of a standard 9mm pistol, like a Glock or a SIG or an M&P and what have you. Well, the M&P manufacturer has a shield called the 9EZ. And it's called easy because it's easy to rack the slide. It's very easy to rack the slide. In fact, it takes about roughly half the force to rack the slide on this 9EZ model compared to racking a regular pistol. And so I just want to recommend this because this is a time to be armed up for self-defense and to practice using a firearm. And it's a great equalizer, even if you're a woman of any age. It's great to have the knowledge of how to use a pistol to stop somebody who might be, trying to burn down your house or something. And so because women typically, especially as they get older, they don't necessarily have the forearm grip strength, right, to grip the top of that slide and actuate that sucker. And I admit on a new handgun that's really tight, like a brand new Glock 19, that can take a lot of force to rack that. And I have taught women in the past to use the sights of a Glock and rack it by grabbing the Glock with both hands around the pistol grip and then pushing it down against the edge of a table or something like that. So you're using your body weight to push down. And that's one way to rack the slide if you're not able to do it with your hand. But, granted, that's a strong disadvantage if you're in the middle of combat or something. It's like, hey, wait, bad guy, let me find a table to rack this slide, So anyway, the M&P Shield 9EZ, which I don't own one yet. I haven't fired it myself, but I've seen videos and I've heard people talking about it. It's very easy to rack, and I do have a regular M&P Shield 9mm, not the easy model, but just the regular model, and it's a very fine handgun. I mean, there's no complaints whatsoever. Totally functional, gets the job done, reliable. It's great. So anyway, for those of you who have had trouble racking that slide, you might want to check out the 9EZ, just like the digit 9 and the letters EZ. And again, this is not a paid plug. I just want you to be armed. That's all. And, and safely armed so you can manipulate the firearm, clear jams, things like that. Now, I imagine that racking the 9EZ slide is probably much easier than swinging a cast iron skillet. that dude did. But I guess either one works for self-defense, right? 1 minute you're camping, the next minute you're defending. Okay. All right, I'm going to walk you through these photos that I took on a microscope, a digital microscope, photos of COVID swabs and COVID masks and so on. And by the way, this is a live digital microscope, so I was able to take videos as well, but nothing was moving under my microscope. So I didn't take any videos. It is no different than taking stills. I've seen there are videos circulating out there that show things moving on the COVID swabs or things moving in the vaccine. Apparently something looks like it may be alive, right? And so at least these have been circulating over the weekend. I have not yet seen anything moving under the scope, but I've only looked at some swabs and a couple of masks. I have not yet acquired a vaccine. Once I do acquire a vaccine, I will definitely take a look at that and see if anything is moving. And if it is moving, I'm going to burn the microscope stand because I don't want to be anywhere near living COVID bioweapons, right? I'm going to be very careful when dealing with that. But I do have other vaccines on hand, and I can't wait to put these under the scope and look for, aborted human fetal cells and things like that. So there's a lot coming in terms of microscopy, and all the all the photos that I'm going to show you here in this podcast today are photos that I took myself. These aren't from anyone else. They're not even from a staffer. I did this work myself. I have, chemists and so on who operate other instruments, but when it comes to this microscope, I like to do it because, well, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, so it's hard for me to give anybody instructions. Like, just look for things that are weird, It's like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. I can't tell you. We just have to be on the lookout. I'm going to walk you through these photos here in just a second. Your mind is going to be blown, especially with the ultraviolet light stuff. So, again, if you want to see the article on this, just go to naturalnews.com. And the article is Health Ranger posts new microscopy photos of COVID swabs, COVID masks, and mysterious red and blue fibers. But before I get to that, I just want to make a comment on something about culture and Hollywood. Really, it's a comment about the dumbest space movie that's ever been made, as far as I can tell. Okay, and it's called Stowaway, and it's a brand new movie, and it's the dumbest space movie ever. It's laughably bad. However, the stars, the actors, are not bad at all. And I saw this at a friend's house. It's Anna Kendrick and Daniel Day Kim and Shamir Anderson. They're great. It's the writing that's just the dumbest thing ever. And I had to mention this to you because it's basically Black Lives Matter in space. And the message of the movie is that the most meaningful thing a white astronaut can do is commit suicide to save a black stowaway on a spaceship. That's the actual message. I mean, spoiler alert, that's the message of the film. But the premise is so funny. The premise is that this nice black man who's supposed to be some kind of a NASA, or not, maybe not NASA, but spaceship engineer, that he somehow locks himself in a ceiling panel where you have to screw the panel in using a screwdriver. He's sandwiched between the panel and the electronics, and he's unconscious. And the ship launches, and he's stuck in there, and they find him once they make it to outer space, and they realize they don't have enough oxygen on the ship for all the people plus this black guy, right? So that's why they have to commit suicide because Black Lives Matter in space. That's the message of the movie. But how could you, if you were a space engineer, how could you accidentally jam yourself almost sandwiched in the ceiling of a space module with a panel screwed in to squeeze you into that space? If you were working on it, you wouldn't close the panel. I mean, and how did he get up there? Because he was working on the ship on Earth, and gravity, he would have fallen down anyway. Anyway, the premise is so bad. And at one point in the movie, here, check this out. At one point in the movie, this is, you know how they have to have in every movie now, a female has to be the superhero, right? It was part of the culture war. So if only a female can do heroic things. No men can do heroic things. Men are all weaklings. So they have this young, healthy black guy, kind of a built-up, semi-muscular, healthy-looking black guy who looks pretty athletic. Like he could go a couple of rounds in the ring, you know what I mean? And at one point, they have to climb these cables in outer space in order to get more oxygen so that everybody can live. And they try to get the black guy to climb the cables, and he can't because he doesn't have the coordination. He's all flipping upside down and everything. His legs and arms don't work together, according to this movie. And so they have to have this kind of thin, frail white girl do the climbing, and she's the hero. Have you ever seen a white girl who can out jiggy, a talented athletic black guy? Have you ever seen a white girl who can out dance an athletic black guy, or who can out climb an athletic black guy? No, that's never happened. Not on Earth, not in space. So the movie actually insults black people to say, oh, they're not coordinated, they can't climb cables. But this white girl can do it. And then she ends up committing suicide in order to save the black guy because Black Lives Matter in space. All right. So don't bother seeing the movie. That's why I went ahead and ruined it for you. It's the dumbest space movie ever. But what really intrigued me about it is that they had a great idea to grow algae on the ship in order to produce oxygen so they could all live. And so they have algae and they're bubbling carbon dioxide through the algae tanks and giving it light. And the algae is producing oxygen, right? And then somehow on the spaceship, they managed to kill all the algae. And then this creates this crisis where they have to climb the cables and find more oxygen. Let me ask you something. Have you ever accidentally killed algae? Have you ever tried to kill algae? Have you noticed how hard it is? Have you had algae in like a bird bath in your backyard, or algae in your pond, or algae in a water bowl? Like I have a big medium-sized water tank for my chickens. I can't stop algae from growing in that thing. Have you ever tried to stop algae from growing? It's basically impossible. But according to the movie, algae is very fragile and it dies even when the world's best scientists are working on it. And that's what created the crisis. So, and this was a Korean guy. That's the actor Daniel Dae Kim. So the movie actually says that Korean scientists are too stupid to grow algae, and athletic young black men are too uncoordinated to climb a cable. And they all have to be saved by a white girl who sacrifices herself like Jesus to the space gods. So it's the dumbest movie ever. I just had to mention that, but it is funny. It's funny to watch because if you know anything about science and gravity and algae and just reality, then the movie is a riot. But the reason I mention this, not because, most of you probably haven't seen the movie, you probably won't. It's just that these messages are invading pop culture to such an extent that they have to dumb down everything to try to prove that Black Lives Matter in space and that men are stupid and that only women can save everything. And it's every movie, literally every movie it's the same message. The woman is the hero. She's small. She's dainty. Somehow she overpowers all the big hulking men. Right? And every superhero movie now is like this. And only Black lives matter, but not white lives. And this movie is the equivalent of schools saying that 2 + 2 = 4 is racist. So they're just dumbing down everything. But the movie probably makes sense to someone who was educated in our public school system because they don't teach basic science anymore. Nobody understands gravity. Nobody understands centrifugal forces. Nobody understands, basic single-celled organisms, algal blooms and microbiology. Nobody understands. Coming out of our public school system, they don't know what's wrong with a space movie when the ship is flying around with space sounds like, outer space flying around like an airplane. I'm not saying that was this movie, but other movies are like that. And there are no sounds in outer space because there's no air, to carry the sounds. There's no sound transmitted through empty space, I should say, technically. There are sounds inside a ship, but not outside the ship, nothing to carry the vibration. But still, people watch these dumb movies and they don't have a problem with it. I don't know. I kind of have a problem with it. Now, on the subject of space, another news item that's interesting, and then we'll get to the microscopy photos here. NASA, this is from Breitbart, NASA marks milestone conversion of CO2 to oxygen on Mars. Now, where to begin? So NASA, the NASA blog is all excited that number one, they've been able to fly this helicopter on a planet that has virtually no atmosphere, according to them. So obviously they've been lying to us about that the whole time. Obviously Mars has an atmosphere that's thicker than 0.6% of Earth's atmosphere. But now they're saying they've been able to turn Mars's carbon dioxide rich atmosphere into oxygen. They have an experimental instrument on board Perseverance. It's called the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment MOXIE accomplished the task. Now, okay, so what they're not saying, and what I'm laughing about, is that for Mars to support life, it needs a massive amount of carbon dioxide so that plants will grow. When they're making oxygen on Mars, they're making poison for the Mars planet. Mars doesn't need oxygen. Mars needs CO2. You know why? Because CO2 grows plants. That's why. So when they're talking about, oh, we made some oxygen out of the CO2, number one, they're admitting again that Mars has an atmosphere. And secondly, they're just saying, oh, we're going to make oxygen for humans to breathe. But what they're not saying is that the planet needs carbon dioxide. In fact, if you were going to terraform Mars and bring back the atmosphere that once existed there, by the way, because it did, a few billion years ago, whatever it was, had an atmosphere, it was probably lush rainforest and everything on that planet. Mars was full of life. And it's probably still full of life under the surface, by the way. But in order to bring Mars back to that, you would need to produce carbon dioxide and increase the CO2 level in the atmosphere, and then start growing plants and algae to produce the oxygen that would then sustain other life forms. That's how you restore life to Mars. So what they should be talking about is why Earth needs more CO2 to have more plants and more food crops and more rainforests. But instead, they're talking about how they've created poison for plants, which is oxygen. Because, of course, NASA is run by morons. I mean, they crashed a lander into Mars. They crashed it into Mars because they couldn't convert between the imperial system and the metric system. They actually crashed. It was an orbital satellite a few years back. They just slammed it right into the planet. Oops, forgot to convert to centimeters. That's what they did. And now they're trying to tell us that Earth needs less carbon dioxide. Trying to tell us that greening Earth is bad, that they want Earth to be an ice ball, basically a frozen ice ball planet. That's what these people want. So, no wonder they're trying to go to Mars, because they're going to kill Earth. They're going to kill Earth. They're going to turn it into the ice planet Hoth from The Empire Strikes Back. And, if they get their way, that's their goal. Dim the sun, Project Scopex, and then exterminate all human life on planet Earth. Now, by the way, I'm giving a speech for the Steve Quayle event. It's called Extinction Protocols. And I have a 1-hour presentation for that. It's coming up. It's a paid gig. Not me, but I think you pay to watch it, to watch me and a bunch of other speakers. I'm not paid anything. I'm just contributing to it. But go to gen6.com. That's GEN, like Genesis, gen6.com if you want to find out about that. I think it's airing in June, and it's a bunch of speakers talking about Extinction Protocol. But there's no doubt that NASA is trying to commit massive genocide on planet Earth. Now, speaking of genocide, let's talk about the photos of the COVID masks and the COVID swabs, okay? So we're going to go through some freaky stuff here. So if you're watching this as a video, go ahead and, watch the screen again, I suppose. And I'm going to show you the first picture. All right, this first picture, this is a carbon fiber mask, a COVID mask made in China that's illuminated with UV light. And as I was going through and looking at these masks under the microscope, I eventually found that UV light really showed the best contrast. And so the first and the second picture here, they show something that looks kind of like an egg sac. I'm not saying it is an egg sac. It's just shaped like an egg sac, surrounded by carbon fiber strands. And it's freaky looking, right? This is in your mask, at least the mask with the carbon fiber filters. And I'm wondering what we're breathing in these masks. Now, continuing, this is a kind of a black and white. This is looking at the carbon fiber material zoomed out at about 50x. And then the next photo is zoomed in more at about 100x. And then one more photo, this is getting close to 200x. And you can start to see the adhesive, like little thin films between the carbon fiber strands. And you can see some agglomeration of carbon gunk or something. And then the next one just shows a little more of that, more adhesive that you can see, a little sticky stuff clinging together. This is all in the mask. And then finally, the next one shows another one of those weird egg sac looking things with all these carbon fiber strands all around it. Now, I don't know if this is just maybe the texture of the white layer of the mask or something, but it's freaky looking. I'm just showing you what's there. You can decide what you think it is. And then one more photo shows another one of those egg sac looking things, kind of vertical. And that's what the carbon fiber layer looks like. Pretty freaky stuff. Now, next photo, we're zoomed out looking at the white fiber layer of a cheap, kind of a low-end China mask. And you see this pattern of squares. We're going to zoom in with the next photo. This is about maybe 50x, or no, 100x. And then next photo, we're zooming in at 200x, and you can see we're really close to the fibers. Now, these are probably cotton type strands, and you can see how big the holes are in between them, the gaps. And you can obviously tell that a virus would go right through this thing. It's not stopping any viruses. Next photo shows a red fiber strand that just appeared in the middle of this mask. Now, this is a theme that is pretty common here. You're going to see a lot of fibers that are red and blue. And I know that some people are going to say, well, that looks like Morgellons. I'm not claiming they're Morgellons. I don't know what they are. I don't know why there would be red and blue fibers in the middle of this mask, but they're clearly very small. And these are unused masks, by the way. And it's clear that these fibers could be inhaled because they're not long strands that adhere to other strands. These are small fibers that could get lodged in your lungs, kind of like asbestos. All right. Okay. So the next photo is a Taiwan-made mask that shows a very high density weave that shows almost no gaps in between. And this is kind of a high quality, more effective type of mask. So you can see there's a lot of variation in masks based on who's making them and what country in which they're made and so on. But even this mask probably would not trap virus particles, although it would do a better job of trapping larger particles such as dust particles. All right, next slide is a little blue fiber. Once again, when I saw this, I'm like, what is this doing here? Why is this little blue strand? Number one, why is it blue? When everything else is cotton, what got into the cotton? And clearly this is small enough to inhale. So these things are probably in people's lungs who have been wearing these masks. Next slide shows another red fiber that's also quite small and kind of bunched up. And then the next slide is less of a magnification, just shows you both a blue fiber and a red fiber embedded in this mass of cotton fibers. And everywhere I looked on these masks, I would see these fibers. And it was quite mysterious. Now here's the next one, is more of a zoomed in on the blue fiber there. And then we're going to have another photo that's really zoomed in on that. I want to show you something about that later. The next one is more zoomed in on a red fiber that's kind of curled like a reverse letter C. All right, now the next one shows you a black, curly, spiky looking piece that looks like a hook, like a fish hook or something. And one end is even pointy, like a scorpion stinger tail or something. And you can also see that there's a cotton strand over it because the cotton strand is partly translucent and you can see through it. So you can see where the cotton strand overlays this black hook fiber. And I saw quite a few of these hook fibers as well, and it makes me wonder again, are these going into people's lungs, and are they hooking into the lung tissue? Next slide shows a blue, larger hook-shaped mysterious fiber strand. Same question for that one. And then the next slide shows a kind of a grayish, kind of a dirty looking fiber of some kind. I don't know what that is. Now, moving on to the next one, which from here they start to they're orange looking. Now, what I did is I stained these with iodine, because if you've ever done any basic microbiology, you know that there are, I don't know, 6 or 7 different basic stains that you use for staining microbes and skin cells and whatever, pancreatic cells. You use stains in order to bring out the contrast. So I thought, you know what? I've got iodine here. I'm just going to start staining these with iodine so we can see more of the detail. And once I stained with the iodine, it actually, as you can see, it shows you more detail. It shows you these black little, I don't know if they're graphene fibers or what they are, but they are embedded in the mask. The next photo then shows a close-up of one of those black fibers against a backdrop of iodine-stained cotton, I guess. Interesting. And then the next one shows as more of a zoomed-out look, and it shows like 3 or 4 of those fibers all in one shot, just kind of showing you how common those are. Everywhere I look across this mask, it's just full of either black fibers or little hooks or red or blue fibers. Very strange stuff. So then someone also sent me some swabs, some COVID swabs. The first one is a zoomed out look at a cotton swab for nasal sampling. And then the next picture is zoomed in on the cotton swab. Now, from what I can tell, this looks exactly like a cotton swab. I didn't see anything that strange in the fibers so far. At the 200x level, which is the next picture, you can see that these cotton fibers are, pretty homogeneous, I guess you would say, and they're long. So I'm not concerned about long fibers so much. I'm concerned about little short hook-shaped things that might stick to your tissues. So check out this next one, more purple. This is when I decided to take a synthetic COVID swab, which you'll see here shortly, and I stained it with iodine, and then I illuminated it with ultraviolet light. And this really showed the spikes. And this is about 200x. So these little spiky things are what you're being swabbed with the synthetic swabs, not the cotton swabs, but the synthetic swabs. These were the longer nasal swabs that are designed to reach in the back of your nasal passages. So just imagine if you're taking a COVID swab test, you're getting stuck with all these little spikes, basically. The next photo is interesting. I decided to do a time-lapse look at a very deep depth of field of visual focus. And this time lapse is maybe about 15 seconds. And it shows weird kind of sparky lightning looking bursts of light along the edges and the intersections of these spikes when illuminated with ultraviolet light. Now, I don't know what's causing all that. And you notice the spikes seem to have auras. I mean, it almost looks like Kirlian photography, if you've seen that before. I can't explain all of this. I don't know what this is. I'm just telling you, I did an iodine dye of a synthetic swab, and I illuminated it with UV light, and then I did a time-lapse depth of field exposure. And this is what it is. I can't explain it, but I wanted to share it with you. Okay, next slide is the same technique with just a different area of the swab, and you can see the individual swab fiber elements, and some of them are not shiny and sparky, and others are. And they're like weird ghosting images and weird evil energy auras or something. I don't know what this is, okay? I'm just taking a guess as you are. Okay, the next one shows those kind of luminous fibers on the right side more. And I just thought that's a pretty freaky photo. If people knew this is what they're jamming up their nasal passages, they might think twice about that. Now, turning off the UV light, let's go on to the next one. I just want to show you what the swab looks like stained with iodine. under normal light. Just normal white light. There's the swab. Looks like a brush of some kind, right? And then I'm zooming in on it a little bit, kind of maybe 100x for this one, for the next slide. And then moving on to the next slide, zoomed in at about 200x, you can see they look like, this actually looks like something you might see in the coral reef, diving or snorkeling. I'm licensed as a diver. Well, I used to be. Haven't done it for a long time. But you would see all kinds of creepy ocean creatures that look like this that were alive. I'm not saying these are alive, but they do resemble them. These were not moving, but I'm wondering what's on the tips, because you notice how the tips look kind of like there's something there. They look brighter. It's like there's a structure on the tip. And I'm going to work on that later to try to get a better view of what's on those tips. And then for the next image, just showing you the non-iodine dyed swab. Maybe I should have shown these in reverse order, but whatever. This is the swab in regular light, and then zoomed in about 100x, and then zoomed in 150, and then finally zoomed in 200x, where you can really see the structure of these individual synthetic fibers. Very weird looking stuff. Now, the next one shows a little black fiber that's embedded in this synthetic swab. So just as I saw a lot of black and blue and red fibers that were embedded in the masks, I also saw these weird black fibers embedded in the synthetic fiber swab. So I don't know what those are, and I don't know why they would be there. It seems like a contaminant as far as I'm concerned. Okay, and then finally, the last image here that I want to show you. Look at this is a blue fiber, and I want you to notice what looks like feet or spikes on the head of it, which is the lower left-hand corner of it. This is a digital zoom. I couldn't zoom in the microscope anymore. So there's a digital zoom, kind of hard to make out what it is, but there's some spikiness on the end of it. So it looks to me like a fiber that has an ability to adhere to something, like it could grab on, with claws or spikes or whatever that is. So, it raises a lot of obvious questions here. Why are there fibers in these masks and in these swabs that obviously don't belong there, number one? And I was very careful. These were all sealed, sterile packages, by the way. And I had a very clean microscope stage. I cleaned it, wiped it off with alcohol and just rubbed it off and made it perfectly clean before I put these on there. So I didn't introduce these fibers. They are in the masks and in the swabs. In fact, you can see from the photos, some of them are embedded quite deeply into the fibers. So why are these there? Why do they have hooks? Why do they have like gripper ends with maybe claws or something that looks like that anyway? Why are they not the right color? I mean, why are they red and blue and black and gray instead of semi-translucent, clear white, which is what cotton would be, or even the synthetic fibers, more a slight yellow hue. But clearly these red and blue fibers don't belong there. And what's the deal with the egg sac looking things in the carbon fiber and the all of the, I don't know, the glue, the adhesive films that are in the carbon fiber section? And what's with the spikes under the UV light and the little shiny sparky things? I got a lot of questions. I wish I had answers for all this, but I don't. I just have a lot of questions. But this is a lot of what I'm doing here is you support my efforts, and you've given us the abundance to be able to purchase laboratory equipment. So we buy high-end microscopes, right? Video microscopes and mass spec instruments. And then I use those instruments to do this kind of research for you, for the public, and release this for everybody to see. Even when I don't know what this stuff is, but I know it's in there. I mean, I can assure you this is in the mask. I don't know why. But I have the same questions you have, and I've already raised one of them, which is, what's the damage to the lungs when you're inhaling a bunch of small fibers like this? There's already a batch of masks that were recalled in Canada. We did a story on this, that were found to have all kinds of graphene fibers in them. And when people would put on these masks, they would suffer asthmatic type attacks, and they would have inflammation of the lungs, and they would have trouble breathing. Turns out they're breathing in basically, asbestos or something like asbestos, graphene fibers. And you're not supposed to inhale that stuff. And so it raises all kinds of questions. We're being told that we have to wear masks, but there's no standard for masks, is there? There's no standard. There's no quality control. Any mask will do, right? The Democrats just want to see you wearing a mask. It doesn't matter if you're killing yourself with that mask or causing long-term lung cancer. As long as they see you with a mask, they say, well, you must be safe. Well, what if you're killing yourself by inhaling these little fibers? What if you're inhaling all kinds of little tiny microscopic hooks into your lung tissue? What's that going to do for you long-term? Especially given that COVID is supposed to attack the respiratory system and the ability of your hemoglobin molecules to carry oxygen. Well, if you have anything else that is impairing your pulmonary function, and you can't, like your lung tissue just can't function as efficiently because it's full of weird hooks and things, then guess what? That's gonna harm you. These masks are harming people, not helping people. It's clear the virus can slip right through these things. They don't make an airtight seal around the face anyway. And that's obvious. Once you look at it under a microscope, you're like, yeah, if I was a virus, I'd just go right through there. Because, I don't know the exact size of a COVID virus. It was like 10 microns or something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's 30 microns, but we're looking at structures that are way larger than that here. The gaps between these strands are, probably hundreds of microns. So the virus is going right through. So what's the science behind the mask? There is none. There's no science behind wearing masks. We know this now. I understood in the first 2 weeks of this thing last year, I was okay with, the precautionary wearing of a mask if it's voluntary until we learn more. But we learned more. We learned they don't work. And so now the masks are it's just a sign of compliance. That's all it is. And the people that are still wearing masks are, people who may be really putting themselves at harm because of these fibers that are in the mask. So I'm going to continue to do this research and use good science here. Just take pictures with a microscope and publish them. You can't get more raw than that. It doesn't need to be published in a science journal. It just needs to be an honest photo. None of these are photoshopped. There's nothing altered in the photo, except, the resolution maybe, change the size of it. That's about it. These are the real deal, and you're seeing what's in there. So share these photos with anyone that you think might benefit from this, and ask the question, hey, do you want this jammed up your nasal passages? Maybe not. I don't want like weird, sparkly, spiky things in the back of my nose and right next to my brain barrier. And in some cases, they just puncture that membrane and start bleeding, spinal fluid or leaking spinal fluid. That's happened to people too. And then you're just jamming these weird fibers right into the spinal fluid area. That can't be good. No. But of course, you're not even allowed to talk about any of this. YouTube and Twitter have censored Michelle Malkin, who interviewed women who support religious and philosophical exemptions from COVID-19 vaccine mandates. So you're not even allowed to say that you don't want mandatory vaccines. That will be censored, of course. Meanwhile, WSMV.com reports that a woman is paralyzed in a Nashville hospital after receiving the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine. Paralyzed. I'm sorry she is. And I'm sorry for anybody who is harmed by these vaccines. But number one, why is big tech not allowing people who are harmed to share their true stories about the harm so that this woman could warn others and maybe prevent others from suffering the same consequences. But the second question is, people, why are you getting vaccinated with an experimental vaccine? And I guess the honest answer is the media keeps lying to people, telling them it's safe and effective and proven, and that it's been approved by the FDA. Those are all lies. And every so-called journalist that is telling those lies should be criminally prosecuted and charged with being an accomplice to murder. Let's just face it. They should be criminally charged, prosecuted. I mean, the FTC goes after that chiropractor in St. Louis who was, what was he selling? Oh, vitamin D and zinc, right? Going after him, saying, oh, it's unproven. There's no proof that it works. And then the media goes out and says the vaccine works. There's no proof of that, folks. There's not a shred of proof that these vaccines are safe or effective, or that they prevent transmission, or that they prevent infection. Not a shred of proof, because the people taking the vaccine today are the guinea pigs. You are the experiment. You signed up for it if you're taking one of these vaccines. And guess what? We're learning in this experiment that some people get paralyzed, sadly, and some people die, and some people get heart attacks and die, like the rapper DMX, and some people die from other things, like the baseball legend Hank Aaron, and then the CNN finance newswoman. She died after the vaccine. Most of these people I just mentioned are younger than me, and they're all dying from the vaccine. And those are just a few examples. All kinds of people are dying from the vaccine. But none of the deaths are called vaccine deaths. They're called coincidences, right? Oh, they died from coincidence. What a stunning coincidence. This is the year of coincidences. Unbelievable. Now, Dr. Michael Yeadon, former VP of Pfizer, says that vaccine passports are so dangerous, we will be standing at the gates of hell if these are implemented, and then they will push us in. Dr. Michael Yeadon has been a real whistleblower, a very courageous man. I greatly appreciate what he is saying about this. And this is another lesson. Never judge people by their resume. This is a guy who started a biotech company and sold it off to, I think, Novartis, and made a bunch of money off biotech. And this is a guy who's been, I think he's an expert in respiratory transmission, or respiratory diseases, or the transmission of them. And, he's a big pharma guy, and he's a pro-vaccine guy. And yet he's been out here warning that these companies are going to mass murder humanity. And he has just, given up all his reputation in order to tell the truth. So even people from the vaccine industry can become powerful whistleblowers for truth. And we should always be open to that. There are a lot of truth tellers coming out right now because they didn't sign up for this mass genocide. They can see that this is a dangerous experiment on humanity, and the people are dying needlessly, and potentially many millions more, or even tens of millions more, will die. Maybe just this year. Because we know the globalists really want to kill billions, and this is just part of how they're doing that. The CDC has lifted the pause of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine because the CDC is a criminal operation. And so there's no doubt the board members on the advisory board were sufficiently bribed in order to make that decision. Why did they pause it if they knew they're just going to restart it after a little bit of a pause without any new data? It's like, people are dying. Let's just pause it for a few days. And then a week later, we'll reinstate it because they don't care that people die. They don't care. They're getting paid off. It's all just a criminal racket. Of course it is. Unreal. Now, you may have also heard that some vaccination sites are being closed down because in many areas, everybody who wants a vaccine has already received one. So this is really spreading now across America, where pretty much they've hit all the people who were dumb enough to line up and beg for a vaccine. Now, and by the way, so some states are turning down their allotment of vaccines from the federal government, saying, like, we don't need all those anymore. We don't have enough people here that want them. So now what's going to happen is they're going to shift into coercion mode. Mark my words on this. This is what you're going to see. They're going to go from where it was, hey, a bunch of stupid people lined up and raised their hands. We don't have to coerce them, get them first, because the globalists want to get rid of the useless eaters anyway, and that's basically who those people are in their view. And next, they're going to have to go after the more intelligent people who are skeptical of vaccines. So in order to do this, they're going to have to push a lot of coercion. So this is where they're going to have like door-to-door visits and tactics like that. It's like, knocking on the door. Hey, you in there, you unvaccinated person, you're a danger to the public. Here, roll up your sleeve. That's what they're going to do next. And if they can get away with it, they're going to push vaccine passports, and they're going to have restrictions against unvaccinated people. Like, you can't walk into this grocery store. You can't go to this sports stadium. You can't get on an airplane, And probably at some point, the courts will start taking away children from parents who don't get vaccinated. They'll say, well, you're an unfit parent. If you're unvaccinated, you're obviously unfit. You must be a danger to your children. State's going to have to take them. That has already, elements of that have begun with masks. The courts are taking children away from some parents who refuse to wear masks and refuse to mask their children. So once again, vote with your feet. Don't live under tyranny. If you can, get out of these places. I was about to use some profanity. Get out of these places before they take your kids or whatever they're going to do. Throw you in a medical facility without your consent, vaccinate you without your consent. Launch mosquitoes with COVID vaccines in them. I'm sure that's like Bill Gates' ultimate dream when he's like, oh, we should just breed mosquitoes to mass vaccinate everybody without their consent. That would be so awesome. The weird dreams of genocidal billionaires, they just want to wake up and see mass death everywhere. It's like, awesome, yeah, the climate's great. But the coercion phase is kicking in. And this is where we really have to be on guard. Now, fortunately, there's a lot of pushback that's building now. A lot of pushback from scientists like Dr. Michael Yeadon, a lot of pushback from the public, a lot of pushback against masks, a lot of new studies coming out. For example, a study out of MIT showing that social distancing is a total crock. There's no science behind it. Give me a break. They make you walk into a restaurant with a mask on, then you sit down at your table and you can take off the mask. And then you got to put one on to use the restroom. Give me a break. The air moves around. It doesn't make any sense. It's all nonsense. So the fake science narratives are beginning to crumble. My advice is keep the pressure on, folks. Call your city council members. Call your local PTA if you're involved in the school, or show up at the meetings, show up, grab the microphone, let them have it. Oh, and by the way, speaking of that, I just interviewed Leigh Dundas. Yeah, she's the one who did that amazing 3-minute speech before the Orange County board. I forgot what board it was. It was in Orange County. And I interviewed her. That's available now on my Health Ranger Report channel on brighttown.com. Leigh Dundas she is awesome. I really like that woman. She's got it going. And I've met so many amazing people recently. She's one of them. It's just a firebrand, and she's got tons of knowledge, and she's got courage, and she's got the will to fight for human freedom. She's rocking it. Leigh Dundas. Yeah, she's like jumping up to the top of my awesome people list, right up there with Sherry Tenpenny and people like that. There's a lot of great people out there. Andrew Wakefield, a lot of great people. And anyway, you can check out that interview, and that's a video interview, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I've got some interviews coming up too I'm going to be doing this week. I'll tell you about those. Let me see. Who do I have? Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm interviewing the Ice Age Farmer coming up this week. And also I'm interviewing the Resistance Chicks. Yes. And I'm interviewing, I'll withhold her name until she confirms, but it's another doctor who is awesome. You're going to love that. We've got a lot of interviews coming out. I'm going to be working on the microscope, and we got a lot of good stories for you this week. Just great stuff happening. So keep up the peaceful resistance. Let them know. Let all the authorities know they're full of bunk. You're not going to wear their stupid masks. You're not going to take their toxic vaccines. You're not going to practice their quack science social distancing nonsense. and you're going to fight back peacefully against this. You're going to raise your voice. You're going to be heard, and we're going to demand our health freedom. In fact, our personal sovereign freedom, because we're supposed to be free people in a free country, right? Well, it's time to take that back. And this is how we do it. So a lot more coming for you this week. Whoa, get ready. It is going to be packed. My schedule's already packed, and it's only barely begun. How did that happen? Unreal. In any case, you're not going to be bored this week. It's going to be so much for you to listen to and watch and catch up with and so on. And the Tulsa event is happening again in Tampa, coming up June. I think it's 17th, 18th, and 19th now is what that is in Tampa. You can learn about that at thrivetimeshow.com. Click on, I think it's conferences, and you can get details about that. I was talking to Clay on the phone a couple of days ago, and he said they already had, I think they had over 2,100 people requesting tickets. That was a few days ago. And there's only like 5,000 tickets available. So if you want to go to the Tampa event, it's called Reopen America. You might want to get in the line here and see if you can get those tickets. The way Clay does that, by the way, is you have to fill out a form on his website to say you want tickets, and then they call you back and they do kind of a vetting process. And they check you out before they even sell you tickets. This is how we keep like Antifa out of the church, or whoever. It's an interesting process. Now, I can't yet guarantee that I'm going to be in Tampa. I'm working on it. I'm hoping to be there. I'm working on the plans. That's my intention to be there, but I can't yet tell you I'm 100% committed to being there because I don't have the travel all figured out yet. But if things do work out, I will be there. Okay, I'll be there and maybe get to meet you in person like I did hundreds of people in Tulsa. Well, thousands there, almost 5,000 people in the audience there. So thank you so much for your support. If you want to support us, continue to shop at healthrangerstore.com. That is, if we could ever get anything back in stock. I know we're sold out of everything. We're trying, we're working, we're expanding, we're hiring. We got new machinery coming in, new automation, packing, everything. But my goodness, y'all are buying all our products before we can replace them. So I don't know what we're doing the best we can. Okay. We'll keep working hard to bring you products that you want. And thank you for your support. And thank you for listening today. I'm Mike Adams, of course, the Health Ranger. Until tomorrow, take care. All right. Talk soon.